Hey guys, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for tuning in to what's going to be a review of a big old magnetic palette. This is from the brand Adept Cosmetics and they sent me this along with some other makeup items they have. This is a new to me brand. They got in touch with me and asked me if they could send me some of their stuff, and after taking a look at their website and seeing this baby in addition to their other makeup products, I was like, yes please. So happy to have a chance to get into all this because just a quick little preview, I mean, like, this guy holds a lot. And then I'm also wearing, I'm not going to talk about the makeup today, this is just going to be about the palette because we've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm also comparing it to similar palettes that I own, really just ZPalette. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with other magnetic palettes like this, but just to give you a frame of reference, since I know a lot of people are familiar with ZPalette, I'm going to go through some of those that I have so you can get, you know, like price comparison, dimension comparison, how many shadows fit, things like that. But in case you're wondering, the palette on my eyes is the 4K Stay All Day Eye Palette number 2, Neutrals. Good go-to neutral zone, and I'm wearing a couple of these shades on my eyes today. So let's go ahead and dive into the palette. So here is the palette. It's this beautiful, bold, royal blue exterior, which is made of plastic, and then on the interior you have another plastic. I don't think it's acrylic, but either way, it's a clear divider so that you don't have to worry about your powder spilling onto one another. There's a divider in between the two, and then two magnetic strips or pads here so that your shadows can cling to them on the inside. So this guy retails for $29 and can hold as many, hold on, I need to look at the website, can hold as many as 122 26mm round pans, or 54 37mm round pans, or 18 59mm round pans. So I have none of those sizes in here, I don't think. Actually, these from Makeup Geek might be 37mm, but the eyeshadows that I have in here are slightly larger than the 26mm rounds. So rather than getting 61 single shadows on one side, I have about like a little under 50, I believe, over here. So he's a little bit bigger than that smallest size that I mentioned. It's a mixture of Makeup Geek and Anastasia for reference. For a size reference, if you're familiar with that. But even if I am under the max threshold or max estimated threshold for this guy, I'm still pretty impressed with how much it fits. So I stuck a bunch of kind of my standard size eyeshadows over here, like most of my eyeshadows are the size of Makeup Geek and Anastasia over here, because I want to compare it with a Z palette that has similar size palettes later. But I did want to show you, you know, over here there are kind of miscellaneous brands. I have Tooth and Nail Cosmetics, Makeup Geek blushes, more Makeup Geek shadows. Here is Strobe Cosmetics eyeshadow, so they're slightly larger than most of the eyeshadow pans that I have. And I put them in here just, you know, means comparison. It's a one size fits all sort of palette. And it also helped me realize that these are really strong magnet pads, which I know some palettes out there can have an issue with. And what I found is that it's less the strength of the pad inside and more the strength of the eyeshadow pan itself, because for instance my Makeup Geek adhere really well in here, these Tooth and Nail adhere really sturdily, but the Strobe are slightly less magnetized, and so those I find I have dropped this guy, believe it or not, and those are the ones that went flying first. We had no casualties though, folks. That was a huge bonus. I think like 3 of these guys came dislodged and that was it. There was no broken powder, no nothing, and this clear case helped keep any like little fallout that did come of it out from the other side of the book, if you will, is kind of what it is. Overall, really impressed with how much this holds, the strength of the magnet inside, the fact that it has that plastic divider so that if you wanted to put, say, cream products on one side, that barrier helps keep it safe from any fallout that you might experience from powder products on the other side, whether it's normal run-of-the-mill fallout or you are a klutz like me and you drop it. Actually there are 2 kind of things I want to mention here that are kind of tricky. The plastic barrier here has a little notch for your finger so you can pull it out, but you notice if you have a shadow like I do here, it can kind of, your fingernail, depending how long it is, how you dig in there, you can kind of nick shadows and lose a little bit of powder that way. You can kind of see that I have done it here. Not all of this is current damage because I am just generally pretty klutzy with my life in general, but some of this came to be because I was picking at that plastic thing, because it does lock into place so it's not flying everywhere. As a result, you do tend to need to get at under that cutout to move the plastic. If you have a shadow there, it can get a little nicked. It might just take some rearranging and stuff, one less shadow that you get to have on this side, but just something to note. Depending on the configuration of your powders, it might not always be avoidable. Then the other thing is the exterior. For as much as I love this hard plastic exterior, and I think it helped save my shadow shadows when I dropped it and like it crunched against this hard table in the back behind me. It came to me a little bit scraped on the outside, like it doesn't hide wear and tear all that well. If you're in it for the durability, that probably won't mean anything to you, but if you like to have, you know, shiny, pretty, pristine packaging, you'll definitely notice some nicks and bumps along the way as this encounters some wear and tear if you're traveling with it, things like that, which I totally would, because I think shadows are really safe in here without having to pad it with a lot of stuff. But at the same time, you're probably going to notice those superficial, like really cosmetic wear and tear. The sturdiness of the palette's not compromised, but you know, just little superficial nicks and scratches. You'll probably notice that sooner with this than you might another palette. Now onto the comparison. Like I said before, I really only have ZPalette to compare it to. I do have like an Inglot Freedom palette, but those are sectioned off and specifically made for square magnetic, like the Inglot square shadows. So it's not really comparable there. I had a MAC palette way back when, but that's before they made them to be free-form magnetic, and so that doesn't really count. It was poorly magnetized, would not recommend, but I haven't tried the latest version of that. So this is really my main point of comparison. And I have quite a few of them, mostly of the normal size. I actually emptied about 3 of these, more than 3 of these actually, to get everything that is in the Adept palette, but I also wanted to compare it to the extra large palette. So for reference, this is the extra large Z palette. It holds 35 shadows by comparison. Let me see if I can, oh, this is like a recipe for shadow disaster. Let me see if I can juggle these together. So for reference, like I said, I think I have somewhere just shy of 50 shadows over on one side of the Adept palette. And meanwhile, here are 35 in one Z extra large palette. And the extra large Z palette retails for $28, while the Adept is $1 more at $29. And I mean, look at that additional capacity. So needless to say, the regular palette here that I emptied a couple into my Adept palette doesn't have near the capacity, holds about 28 shadows and retails for $20. So a worse value compared to this guy. And while ZPalette does make a back-to-back palette just like this, in fact, it's this dimension, but just stuck back-to-back to each other, that still only gives you 56 shadows per one of this-ish size palette with a little bit of extra bulk this way. The major difference besides composition is ZPalette is cardboard with like a black lacquered sheen over top, although they do have lots of patterns if you care to express yourself. The main difference I would say is this plastic, the transparent plastic over top, whereas the Adept palette's completely opaque. Some people might really like that. If you have a couple of these palettes lying around and you want to see, you know, what's inside for easy access, you do have to open the Adept palette up to double check what's inside there before you go and grab it. The other thing that is worth mentioning, especially as I hold one in each hand right now, is the weight difference. I think the cardboard makes the Z palette a little bit lighter, whereas the plastic in the Adept Cosmetics definitely adds some weight to it. But I do think it comes at adding a little bit of extra protection as well. Like I mentioned earlier, it just has a little bit of a harder surface to absorb those drops and falls. So really those are the main differences between the two palettes. I think it comes down most to functionality and like how you see yourself using these, whether you like to keep your shadows separated by brand or by color or whatever, or if you want them all in one place. I personally really like this because I find I tend to gravitate towards one palette that I reach for. I put it in my daily rotation and then I don't reach for another palette for the next month or 2 months or however long it is until I change up my routine next. And so I find that a lot of my makeup, if you recently watched my decluttering video, a lot of makeup falls by the wayside that way, and I just feel like it goes wasted. And so I do think this is going to help me be a little bit better about getting through shadows that I know and love. They're not top of mind, and so they don't get the love they deserve. Between that and the fact that it's really made to kind of mix mediums, if I were to take one palette, you know, traveling or whatever, and I could have both creams on one side, powders on the other, and guarantee that it stays protected because that plastic barrier, that's another plus. I just really, really like this palette, and given the value, I mean, just in terms of how much product this holds, even if you can't fill it right away, I'm sure you could grow into it if you're a makeup lover like me. So the value is just insane given that this is $29 and that similar palettes hold a fourth of the product and retail for $1 less. So those are my thoughts on this. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it helpful. I know a lot of you guys were curious when I shared a couple pictures and videos of this on my Instagram. So like I said, hope that helped. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.